Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're here at FlintTalkRadio.com for a special program. We are taping today, Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and we know that you'll be tuning in at your own time, and so we are very glad to bring you a special program here at the #1 podcast studio in Genesee County. Today we have a special guest in the studio, and that's Mr. Sam Johari, who I just met a few minutes ago, and he's going to be talking to us about his anti-drug program and campaign he's carrying into the area schools. And of course, we know we need anything that will help the children become more focused in their studies. And we are very glad to have you here this afternoon, Mr. Johari.
Thank you.
Glad to be here. Thank you for coming in, and we hope to have a lively conversation. I'm going to be learning things as we go into the conversation with Mr. Johari, because we have not met previous to the program, and I'm going to be asking questions where I hope it will be edifying for those of you out there in the listenership. I'm going to be learning some things here at the same time. Mr. Johari, you have the program called Chase the Dragon. It's an anti-drug program. Can you start us out by telling us how you got started in this program?
Yes, sir. Valentine's Day 2014, I lost my child to a heroin. And from that, Brianna was a smart kid. She was beautiful. She played sports. She was on the debate team. And Community Parent got started after she died. A couple days later, a friend of hers also died from the same thing. So Tony Brown he's the CEO of Community Parent, and a few other gentlemen. They formed this Community Parent and got a hold of the Genesee County Sheriff Department, and they formed this program called Chasing the Dragon. And Chasing the Dragon is, after the first hit of heroin, you're always chasing this dragon. But we cover all forms of drugs when we go into the school. It started out with just the heroin thing, but we find that 4 out of 5 heroin users, they start with opiates, pain pills. So we, originally they called me and they said, "Sam, will you speak?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll speak." Then they called me a couple hours later. They says, "Well, can we use your 911 call?" And it was like, to be honest with you, I mean, I relive her death every time I go to do this, but it's definitely touching home, because every home is touched by drugs and alcohol.
Now, you said February of 2014 this year.
February 14th, 2011.
2011. So you've been involved in this program for about 3 years now?
Yeah, a little over 3 years.
Did you have any involvement with any kind of anti-drug programs before that, or the whole motivation was the loss of your daughter?
Exactly. And the whole thing is, I thought addiction, I thought it was choice. I'm finding out it's not a choice. It's a brain disease that we are born with. Our brain is just not wired the same way. So 1 out of 10 people have this addiction genes or this disease that they're born with.
I see.
And to be honest with you, I was very mad at her. Her brother was mad at her. Why doesn't she just quit? And Brianna's mom was an addict. So I never thought she would go that route, because her mom died of an addiction. So I've personally went to opiate conferences, and I've educated myself more about this addiction, and it's a disease that this war we've got to beat it. We are losing more kids to addiction, or more people to addiction, than any disease out there.
I see. How long was it between the time you found out about your daughter being involved in drugs and then the actual fatal involvement with it?
Approximately 2 years.
2 years.
Yes, sir.
And you were trying to get help for her and things of that sort.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, when you don't know what to do, you turn to our system that you expect help from them, because they're supposedly the professionals. But I thought I was looked upon like I was to blame, because when you're suffering when your child is suffering with addiction, you're very embarrassed because growing up, you think these are losers. These are people are low of the low. But this is happening in all good homes. Addiction is not prejudice. It doesn't matter how much money you got, what color your skin is, how much education you have. That's addiction.
That had to be very difficult. You said you lost your wife.
Well, she wasn't my wife. She was the mother of my
The
child.
mother of your child.
Yes.
And you think that was inherited from her mom in terms of her having inherited this disease?
Yes. From what I've learned about this disease, we are born with it, and like I said, it's a brain disease, just like cancer or any kind of sickness, and we need to treat it as such.
I'm going to ask you about Chasing the Dragon in a minute, but I wanted to ask you, how long was it between the time of your daughter's death and you're getting involved in these anti-drug campaigns that you're involved in now?
Approximately a month and a half.
A month and a half?
Yes, sir.
So you agreed in process and then you thought you would do something in her name, was the idea?
Yes.
How did that happen? Someone was aware of your loss?
Yes. At the time, Joe Graves was a county commissioner. He's a state rep now. He had came, because he knew Brianna, he had came to our business and wanted to give his condolences. And my wife told him, Joe, we need to do something about this. Too many kids are dying. So Joe didn't really know what to do, but he agreed that something needed to be done. So at the time, he got a hold of the sheriff department, and the sheriff department was working on a program. And at the same time they were working on this program, a friend of the undersheriff had just went to jail and contacted him. A deputy of his had just lost her sister to this. So it just all came together.
I don't know if you mentioned on the air, how old was your daughter when she deceased?
She was 17.
17 years old. And that means she would have been around 11th grade, somewhere around 11th, 12th
Yes.
grade. That is a tragedy. When you lose anyone in your family, you think about you bury your parent, you bury your parents don't bury their children.
Exactly.
And I buried a son who deceased, 35 years old, so I know how that feels when a parent has to bury their child. So you got involved in this group called Chase the Dragon. Was that already set up as an organization, or is this something you set up?
No, it was the group was called Community Parent.
Okay.
That's the group that we got together with and formed. Chasing the Dragon, the Genesee County Sheriff Department was in the process of making this, and it just came all together.
And so you just joined together.
Exactly. At the time they asked me to speak, we had a friend of mine that lost his child 2 days later. He would also speak. We had somebody that her daughter was out on the street, and she spoke. We had the deputy, lost her sister. She spoke. So, like I said, it just came all together.
Well, as Community Parent, what is it now? Is it still Community Parent?
It's still Community Parent. It's a nonprofit group.
And it is Chasing the Dragon. Is that too?
Yes, Chasing the Dragon is the presentation that we put on schools.
Okay.
And in a little over 3 years, we've been in front of 35,000 kids.
35,000.
Yes.
So you're not just covering Genesee County.
We've been outside the Genesee County.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you now? Tell us about Chasing the Dragon. You and I were talking about it just briefly off the air, but you were saying something about when you get into addiction, it's like you're chasing the dragon, which is kind of where the name kind of was impetus of the name came from. So tell us a little bit more about how that is an application of how drugs actually operate. Chasing the dragon would be you take a hit or something like that, and then you continue to look for that high point.
Well, what happens, George, is as young people, they start going to parties or they want to experiment. Well, 10 of us will go to a party. One of us, that's the Russian roulette. that they can't recover from it because their brain, they're kind of inapt, or they feel like they don't belong. But all of a sudden they got some alcohol, or they hit some weed, or prescription drugs. Now they feel complete. You know, they have this euphoria or whatever. And what happens is, for us, you know, we don't have to touch it again, or once in 6 months or whatever. But with them, it becomes, that controls their life. They do anything and everything to get the drugs. And what happens is there's a lot of great athletes that that will get hurt, and they will go to their doctor, and the doctor will prescribe opiates or pain medicine. And it will be the same thing when it comes to them. They will become addicted to the prescription drugs, and from the prescription drugs, a lot of times the doctor knows you're an addict. He quits giving you medicine, so you turn to the streets. And it's a lot less costly to turn to heroin. 4 out of 5 heroin users, they start with prescription drugs.
I see. Well, your studies that you did because of your tragic loss, did it lend itself to the idea that there are just some people? Is the disease an addictive personality? Is that the disease?
Best way to describe it is it's a brain disease.
It's a brain disease.
And listening to some users, you know, they just feel like inapt. They don't belong, or like something is lacking in their personality or in how they are. And that's, you know, the drugs, it just gives them that thing, you know, that feel of completion.
You know, when I was principal, you said you're going to be going out to Beecher
Yes.
Next month. And when I was principal, we had some of the officers come in to talk to us about drugs, and they showed us what was, I forget the name of the drug now, but it was a little rock or something, some kind of drug.
Crack.
And none of us knew what it was because it came in after our era. You know, we
Sure.
came from another school.
Sure.
And we were looking, what is that? And they had to explain to us, you know, the addiction and how it operates and things of that sort. So I'm really glad you're going into these schools. What do you think that you have accomplished, and what are some of the things that you feel are the high points of some of the students you've talked to? You've talked to 35,000 students. So what kind of things have happened in that interactiveness with those student populations?
Well, we were just in Davison last week, and afterwards, I had their counselor came up to talk to me, and I says, you know, have you been getting some feedback? She said, Mr. Jahari, my phone hasn't stopped ringing. The parents are calling. All their kids are talking about this. So we're bringing it out on the surface. A lot of times, as a parent, we have a hard time talking to kids about drugs, about sex, you know, about these things that we need to prepare them for the world. And to be honest with you, I've had a lot of administrators that don't want to bring this out on the surface, you know. But the best way to tackle this, and the best way as an educator, is to prepare our kids for the world. And this is definitely a big part of the world that we're living in.
I see. Have you had any problems with getting into some of the schools? Have some said no, for example, to you coming in?
Oh yes.
Really?
We had a lot of resistance, and to be honest with you, I really hand it to Mr. Wright. He's the superintendent of Lake Fenton. He was the first to say, "Oh yeah, we need to bring this to our school," and I think the whole thing is, you know, everybody's so sue happy and stuff, and they don't want to. You know, cause any heartache, so let's not deal with it. Well, you know, that's the best way to deal with something.
I think schools, Sam, have to be the corridors in which you bring this instruction. I don't know if it's not so easy for parents to bring it up. My parents never discussed anything with me. I didn't know about sex.
Exactly.
I didn't know about anything.
I agree.
But fortunately, during my era, it wasn't such a problem out there. We didn't have a lot of hard drugs. And I thought drugs, quite frankly, the hard drugs, was what the entertainers took. And that was always, I'll tell you a little side point, I was very disappointed. I watched Ed Sullivan show, and they'd have this person supposed to be on the program, and I went into the end of the program, he didn't show up. And to find out later on, like Ray Charles, was in drugs, he was in rehab.
Yeah.
And that's the only contact we had. Now you have these drugs mainstream, and to say that person don't want to talk about it, I think you have to.
Exactly.
and particularly in the schools. How much of that has been a problem? You're in a lot of schools. You talk 35,000 students. So how much of that has been a problem in terms of the schools, in terms of maybe a percentage basis? How many schools on a percentage basis would you say no, don't come in and
To
do
be
this
honest with you,
program?
it's not that they say no; they just never return your calls.
Don't want to be bothered at all.
Exactly.
To have
Exactly.
under their desk.
Well, I went into this one area, and they're having big time problems with heroin and with overdoses. And I was telling them that I'm feeling a lot of resistance from the administrators and these schools. And the one lady, she was in charge of like a coalition for the young. She said, well, they have to have so many hours of teaching, so many. I said, well, exactly. This is what this is. We are teaching our children. When we grew up, my age is just say no. Well, we want to tell them no, but this is why we're telling you no. There's a reason behind it. Addiction doesn't necessarily mean drugs. It's anything that controls your life, whether it's gambling, pornography, sex, anything that controls you to that sense. That's the addiction. That's the brain disease.
I see. Well, if you tell me that they're not wanting to listen to that message, it may well be that you're able to get some students on drugs that can't get the instruction. You can sober those children up where they can get the lesson out. I think you would be accepted. And if I were principal, I would demand you come into the school and give that message out to the students. You say you have a partner. How many persons are involved in this organization?
There's approximately 8 people that are their core: the CEO, the president, the treasurer. But the whole thing is, what I find, George, I don't want to piss nobody off, put it that way. But when something happens, everybody comes forward, and we used to get in our meetings 150, 200 people at our meetings, and from legislature to all kinds of professionals, and a lot of times. I found that it was they were looking for their 15 minutes of fame, not really to do something, positive. And we've weeded them out, put it that way.
I see. Well, we always have the choir comes, the choir arrives and all the hallelujahs are shouted, and then after that is over, they go home and do what they were doing, which was nothing before that. I have a study group, and we had a whole lot of folks at the very beginning. Now we have down to about 4. So
Exactly.
I know what you're saying. But you have a hardcore group. You said 8 people that are the central network of your organization.
Correct.
And you don't think they're going?
They're the workers. They're the workers. No.
Now, are they sharing? Do they share the same kind of experience that you're sharing? I know
No.
your commitments cost your daughter. What do you think is motivating them to go out here and do the community work?
Well, what motivated them is they used to think the same way I did. They knew Brianna. They were her coaches in debate. They knew what a good kid she was. And they realized, we live in Lake Fenton. This is a good area. This isn't supposed to happen there. Well, it's happening in every area.
I see.
It's happening in every area. And I think that was a wake-up call for everybody.
Yes.
That to lose 2 people in the same town in a few days.
We got
Wait
a problem.
minute, we got a problem. Exactly. I was looking at MLive a couple days ago. The chief of police, he's talking about Saline was named the #1 area to live in Michigan, and last year they had 15 overdoses.
My goodness.
3 people died. So now they got a task force. We got a problem here. And that's the whole thing. For everybody that you hear about that died this way, there's probably 100 that nobody knows about, or it's hush hush.
I see. Well, now you're very coherent about this whole problem you are taking into those schools. Were you educated about it at that point, or did you have some knowledge of it prior to that experience that you had?
No, sir. I after Brianna died and we started going into the school, I wanted to be the educator for these children because I found that our system isn't really doing that or prepared for that. Even a doctor, my doctor, my family doctor, he sends me a letter and he says, your daughter was very belligerent last time she was here. I don't want her to come here. Now my daughter's got a problem, and you're a doctor, so you're not gonna see my daughter.
I see.
This is the society we're living in. So, you know, the whole thing is, I didn't want Brianna's death to go. I felt like she was, she was a sheep. You know, I want something good to come out of it. I want her not to be remembered that she died of an overdose. I want her to be remembered how many she saved from her story.
Yeah, I think that your story is compelling, and I really have to admire people who have had a tragedy and then didn't leave it there. They want to make some good out of it, as you said you are doing, and you're motivated now to save some of the other children, not just your child, but in the aftermath of that tragedy, you want to try to save some other children that have not met that fate at this point. I think it's admirable that you would do that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
Now,
that.
how are you financed? Are you getting funding from some?
We are getting funds from business people. We're getting funds from we're getting some grants. And we ask for money from schools that can afford to pay us. You know, but as far as the program itself, we don't get paid. We have a production company. That's the only one that gets paid every time we come to do the presentation.
Your production company.
Yes.
And what does a production company do?
They're the ones that have they bring their own equipment. They have the speakers. They have
You import all of
videos.
these speaking systems and
Yeah, it's
the
a company.
videotape.
It's a company
It's a company.
that we've hired.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many? Now, do you have a number of tapes that you accumulate, and do you try to sell those
No
tapes? And
No, we did come up with a DVD that. But really, we haven't sold anything on that since we more give it out. This is what we do, you know, trying to get the doors to open.
Give us some sense of how that would go if you're in a school. Here's a principal up here introducing you, and he's trying to get off the stage. Most parents may start squawking about his bringing you in the first place. He says, and now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to bring on the group called Chasing the Dragon, and I'm getting out of here. And what do you do once he brings you on stage?
Well, what happens is as we start off, there's pictures and rock and roll music, you know, just banging, and there's pictures of people shooting up. There's pictures of you know, a coffin. There's pictures of this is my brother. I used to have a brother. Now he's a thief. You know, stuff like this.
Really?
Then as the music stops and that stops, 911 call goes into effect. So as 911 plays, I'm usually in the back sobbing. But by the time it stops, I come out and
It really affects you that way?
oh yes, I feel every time I do this, I'm kind of whacked for the whole week. It's like going to barrier every time I do this.
I see.
You know, and I tell these children, I don't do this for me. I do this for them. You know, that to be honest with you, I've had a few, about 5 different messages on Facebook of kids saying, "You saved my life,"
My,
and it's the best feeling in the world.
I see. So you are doing great work in terms of intervening in children's lives the way you're doing. Do you see yourself doing this for a long period of time, or do you think this is at some point going to be a part of your memory?
I don't know. You know, sometimes God has something for us to do. We don't know what it is, but we get thrown into something, and that's how I feel. It's like, you know, I live this every day. I eat, I sleep. It's like, okay, I need to contact this school. I need to talk to this. So my wife, she's like, please, honey, you know, I need you to be over here. But I really feel that this is what I need to do.
Now, what else are you doing outside of this work? I mean, this is time consuming. What are you doing?
I have
a 9 to 5 kind of.
I have a business.
Yeah.
I have a restaurant at the farmers market.
Okay.
in Flint, and that's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays. And my wife is the lady in charge.
So while you're doing what you're doing, she's there
Yeah.
selling. What are you selling at the store there?
Middle Eastern restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to come by and see you. I'm just so impressed with what you're doing. I just love people that get involved in the community. I can't see why we can't get more people to become activated, because we need you, all of you out there listening to this program. We need you involved in the community.
Exactly.
And I think you're setting a good example. What's that guy's name that does the program on Most Wanted? He lost his daughter,
He lost his boy.
his boy.
Yeah.
And he was similarly motivated, where he didn't want that to just end with his son's death. I think his son was buried or something alive.
He was kidnapped,
Kidnapped.
and they found him like a few years later.
Yeah, and I just have to,
Yep.
to come out of that sorrow and that mourning of a personal loss of that magnitude, and then go out and do something positive, is to be admired. And I have a lot of admiration for you. I'm gonna have to come buy some of that food from just
All right, sounds good.
you're involved.
You know, George, I don't think, I think when we're born, God knows already when we're coming to him. But I was so pissed off after she died, because the last 2 years of her life, it was so much anger. And, you know, and that's what I dread more than anything, because I wasn't as understanding as I should have been. You know, I should have been more loving as a father. You know, but you know, as a father, you're the protector, and I could not protect my daughter from this.
I don't know how you intervene, not having lived through that yourself. I don't know how one would intervene. I don't think we as parents. I'm a step parent. I don't have any children of my own, but I'm a step parent. And I don't know how I could have intervened in the middle child's life to have changed the course of his trajectory. And I did not maybe do the things I could have done. I didn't know what to do. Two of the children are doing really well. One went off into another domain. And you always ask yourself the question, what could I have done differently? But I don't know if I could have, if I had the experience to do that which he needed me to do, to stop what was going on here. But now, how many students come up to you after the programs are over and want to continue the discussion with you? And
what we do is, after the program, we are usually waiting in front of the doors as they come out, and we'll get the majority of them that will come up and shake our hands and, you know, sorry for your loss. And you get a lot of them. I lost my mother. I lost my father. I lost my brother, my cousin. You know, they can relate because it's happening in their, in their lives.
Yes.
So, like I said, everybody's touched by drugs and alcohol, and the best way to face it is heads on.
Yes.
You know.
I didn't know it was such a big production. I thought you went in, here's a microphone, you start talking. It seems like you got
No, it's
a big production.
exactly.
That you have there.
Yeah, it's about an hour and 15 minutes long.
An hour and 15 minutes.
Yep.
And how much of that is you have a video of some things that are going on and all of that, and you got music. How long is that part of how long is that part of the program?
Probably 10 minutes, 15
About 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And the rest of
then
it?
we also have with that 10, 15 minutes. There's also a documentary of people that were on heroin, and they talk about, you know, nobody told me about this. You know, they just said no, but. I have a fighter that was in the MMA. He was fighting for the championship, and from that, you know, he ended up getting hooked on pain pills, and from that he turned to crack, then heroin. So he's a speaker. Excuse me. And I have a coach, a football coach, went to college and was very well off. Ended up losing everything he owned. He speaks about his addiction. I also have somebody that was the thug in the street. You know, that was the pusher. He speaks. So they get a little of everything, and the whole thing is, the message is addiction. No one plans for it. It's just, this is how we're made up.
Yes.
So for somebody to fall, they can realize, hey, look, I'm having this problem. Maybe I can get some help. There's 24 million in America, 24 million people that are addicts. Only 10% ever get help.
Is that right?
Exactly.
What percentage would you say are those addicts in those schools?
10%.
10% of the schools also,
10%.
and 10% in the
10%.
okay, 24 million altogether. That's, I don't know what percentage will be in the population. Your program is finding, how can people contact, or do you want people to contact?
I do.
Okay, why don't you tell us how they would go about doing that?
I think the louder we are, the more people hear us. And I want everybody to come join. I want everybody's help. And that's what I tell these kids. Join me, because together we can make a change. I can't do it by myself.
Right.
And I get a lot of people that actually, come forward. And we tell these kids after, who is willing to be drug free. And we get a lot of responses from that. I'm with you,
Yes.
which is awesome.
Sam, I have to tell you, it's been really a pleasure talking to you for the last 30 minutes, and I have learned something, and I'm really very appreciative of the job you're doing in your talk with these children. We've got to save the children. That's our future, and
Exactly.
what you're doing is part of the work that's got to be done. Well, we want to thank you.
I was going to say, you do have a couple of dates you want to tell people about,
Yes,
right?
yes. Next week, Monday, the 31st of March, we are going to be at Linden High School at 8:30 in the morning. April 2nd, we are going to be at Fenton AGS Middle School at 12:45. April 14th, we are going to be at Bendel High School at 1 o'clock. At April 21st, we are going to be at Goodrich Middle School at 8:30 in the morning. We are going to be at Beecher High School, I just booked this date, April 28th at 9:30 in the morning. And everybody is welcome to come to any of these. Parents, it doesn't matter who it is, whoever wants to come can come. The whole thing is, we need to be talking to our children. And there's a lot of parents that have the same problems. And, when we go into these schools, I usually have a couple people from different centers, one from the Odyssey House, one from Brighton Hospital, that if kids or somebody needs help, we have somewhere to send them.
I see. Well, I want to thank you for coming in. I've been enlightened, and I'm sure those who are listening to the program have been enlightened as well. Want you to join Mr. Sam Johari on those dates at these particular schools, and want you to get involved in Let's Save the Children.
CommunityParent.org. Please come and help. Anything you can do is appreciated.
Okay. Thank you again, and thank you for listening.